As we've seen earlier, an efficient web marketing strategy is based on data collection and data processing. This is called tracking. Here is what's on the agenda. First, we're going to go through the web analytics principle. So it encompasses tracking, tag management system, campaigns, and URL parameters. Then we'll see what the basic KPIs are, and then we'll have a look at the potential biases. In the first place, let's have a look at the core principle of the navigation on the web and the key role of browsers. When you, the user, type in the URL of a site in the address bar of your browser or just click on a link, you are asking your browser, firstly, to query one or several servers on which some resources are stored. Secondly, to display those resources on your screen. The URL is expressed in user-friendly and hopefully meaningful language, like mywebmarketingclass.com, which name is supposed to be self-explanatory to human beings. Your browser, on the other side, just focuses on the address of the servers where the resources are stored, and this address is expressed by an IP address. This is just like you entering the address of a specific location in your GPS. You enter a human-friendly address that your GPS will translate into longitude or latitude values. This translation is called DNS, standing for Domain Name System. Let's illustrate this. This is the website that you know well by now. That's mywebmarketingclass.com, and it is expressed in a hopefully user-friendly way. But that's exactly the same site, this time with its IP address, and as you can tell, that's exactly the same, only here what's displayed on the address bar has changed. That's the URL and that's the IP address. When the servers have been queried and allow your browser to access to the resources, your browser is able to compile them before rendering them on your screen. What you should retain from this slide is that your browser grabs and brings to you the content you request, more or less like a waiter would do in a restaurant when you order a meal. So your browser is actually working really hard for you to be able to consult whatever content you want to do on the internet. Let's go through some examples of tasks your browser can perform for you. So first of all, your browser grabs the content for you, the raw content. Let's illustrate this with the ESSEC website. So here am I, that's the ESSEC website, and I want to illustrate the fact that your browser is grabbing the raw content for you. So what I do, I'm going into the console, which is basically telling me everything that the browser is performing for me. So there I go. What if I refresh the page? I can see here all the tasks that are performed by the browser. So basically the browser is grabbing some content for me, and I can see that there are some images. There are, for example, this Twitter logo. We have media, so files that are being made available for me and that are downloaded on the server and so on. So let's have a look here at this carousel. So there it is. If I go and inspect it, I see that this is this element. And if I decide that for some reason I just don't want it to be displayed on my screen anymore, I just have to change the source code, to instruct my browser not to take that into account. No worries, so it is just on my side, meaning on client side. I am just illustrating the fact that your browser is just looking at the source code in order to know what should be rendered on your screen. Okay, so that was for raw content, and it's mostly HTML code. Now let's look at the second type of task that can be performed for you, and it has to do with the look and feel of the page, and it is expressed in CSS code, so cascading style sheet, and it's basically the instruction of how the page or the screen should be displayed. So there I am on the ESSEC website, and the CSS style, that's basically this, how everything should be offered on the screen, rendered on the screen. So all the instructions are placed here in this Add section, and well, I just have to look at CSS to see all the instructions. So it's telling the browser go there because there are instructions on how to display the page. And you can tell that if I delete this instruction, you still have the raw data, so the raw content is still here, but it's displayed in a way that mimics the first websites. So it's not really, well, it's kind of creepy, but the raw content is still here. So this is just to illustrate the fact that your browser is taking into account for you the look and feel of the pages. And there's a third type of task that is really the core of the internet. So internet is offering a way, as opposed to say a magazine, so you can just flip the pages and this is it. On the internet, you can go and click on links, fill in forms, do whatever you want, whatever you do, you interact and there is a response. And this is handled by your browser as well. So executing an action as a result of interaction is frequently written in JavaScript code, and we're going to see in a minute how your browser is handling that for you. Okay, so back to the ESSEC website. If I refresh the page, you'll see that everything is going back to normal, which illustrates the fact that I didn't change anything on the server because, as you can tell, my browser is still grabbing the right resource. So I just modified the aspect on my side, on the user side. Now, let's say that I'm happy with this carousel, but I find it a little bit too serious for me, and I want to change that. So let's say that I want to get a click button because, well, that's great, a click button. So here I've just pasted a little piece of JavaScript code. Actually, that's jQuery, but jQuery is a library of JavaScript, and here it is. There is a click me button. Alright, so a click me button certainly has to be clicked, and that's an interaction that should lead into some actions being performed. So I decide that when I click on the click me button, I would like to get an alert message along with a change in these pictures that are great but a bit too serious for me. So I'm clicking here, that's my alert message, and when I click on OK, it is changing the picture in a way that pleases me more. Alright, so that's just an illustration that what your browser can perform for you. And the key concept is that you can instruct your browser to do something for you as a result of an interaction. And we'll see that tracking is just based on that. So you'll be asking your browser, when you track a website, you'll be asking your browser to record whatever you want to be recorded. So if someone clicks on the link, for example, and you want that to be recorded, then you'll ask your browser to put that information in a specific database that you'll be able to query. That was the purpose of this slide. All right, so this is just what I said. If you want to collect data, then if you want to analyze things, first of all, you've got to get your raw material, which is the data. So you just have to collect it in the first place. So tracking is precisely looking at interactions that are taking place on your site or app. Therefore, it makes sense to place a code in the source code of your site, instructing your browser to keep track of users' interaction. This is called a tracking code. All site-centric tools provide tracking codes that record the very basic interactions. By default, the tracking code records page views, users, time on site, and several other metrics and dimensions that we'll see in this lesson. So the example with me changing a bit the carousel, it was just to illustrate the fact that you can instruct your browser to do something. And you do that by pasting some code, injecting some code. And that was just for fun purposes, but if you want to actually record things, the principle is the same. You just place a code that instructs your browser to record things in a dedicated database, the database of your tracking tool. And if we are to track a website, we call that a site-centric tracking tool. So by default, the tracking code records, as I said, page views, users, time on site, and quite a lot of other metrics and dimensions that we are going to see in this lesson. If you want to dive deeper in details like tracking links on specific features of your website or app, then you'll have to set up custom tags. This means writing JavaScript instructions adapted to what you want to track. And most of the time, this is outsourced to tracking agencies, meaning that the advertiser let tracking agencies do the tracking of their websites or app for them. They just focus on the content of the website or app and they let third parties, so tracking agencies, handle the job. As we previously saw in lesson 2, cookies will be used as well to allow to keep track of unique users. Please note that a site-centric cookie is not supposed to record information that could lead to personally identify someone. The user identifier contained in the user cookie is just a random number. In other words, you'll collect many things about what users do, but you can not personally identify them by name, address, or any other personal information. Also, I know I'm stating the obvious, but I always have this question. No, you cannot obviously have access to your competitors' figures. You can just consult your own data, so the website, you are the owner, with your site-centric tool. So a site-centric tool is just tracking whatever is happening on a website, and it should be yours, or you should have access to this website. You cannot, with a site-centric tool, see the information of your competitors or whatever, not in details at least. So yes, if you use Google Analytics, then you'll have access to the data of your website. If you want to track an app, the principle is the same. You still have to place a tracking code, but this time this will be contained in an SDK, standing for Software Development Kit. So if we try to sum that up a little bit, well, as you recall, the user, types in the URL of the page that you want to visit. This URL is translated into an IP address by your browser, the IP address being the address of the server where the resources are to be grabbed, and this is rendered on your screen. But at some point, you've got to collect data as well. This is why here everything is blue is referring to data collection. So if the source code contains the instruction for your browser to record some things that are happening on the navigation, then your browser will perform that for you as well. And the browser will read the instruction of the tracking code contained in the source code of the page and make all information fall on the dedicated database. That's one thing, and you'll be able then to query this database. This is what you do when you use, for example, Google Analytics. And also, the tracking tool will place a cookie on the cache memory of the device to identify, anonymously of course, users and some of their navigation details. So we have two options here. First option, there already is a cookie. Well, in fact, there are many cookies, but say the user cookie already exists. In that case, the cookie will just be reset. So it means that the value of the cookie is not changed, but the expiration time is set to its initial value. And if there are no cookies, no existing cookies, then a cookie will be placed in the cache memory so that we know that that user has seen this and this content and so on. So that's the thing. Retain that the tracking tool uses cookies. Two options, no cookie in the cache memory of the device, a new cookie is being placed. If there is already a cookie in the cache memory of the device, then the value of the expiration time of that cookie is set to its initial value. All right, so let's illustrate this. Let's see how the information are dropped on the database. We call that a hit, a collection hit. All right, so here I am on my marketing website, lesson 2, and I refresh the page. And I can tell here these are all the tasks handled by the browser. So I'm just going to type in collect and I'll have the collection hits. So some hits are sent into a specific database. So that's how the information of me browsing a certain page is being transferred to the dedicated Google Analytics database. You can tell that it's going to Google Analytics. It's data collection and it's a page view. So it's not really readable. Well, you've got the query parameters here that are displayed in a way that makes it more understandable. So it's a page view. This is the page that is being viewed. That's the title of the page. And GTM here, it says that I am using a specific tag management system that is GTM, so that's Google Tag Manager, and we'll see that in a minute. If you want to see more quickly what hits are being sent, this is the old school method, and this I am using a really nice Chrome extension that is here at Swerve that allows me to see the exact same thing, but this time presented in a way that makes it more easy for me to understand what's going on. So it's saying basically the same thing. That's the page view, that's the title of my page, that's the URL of my page. I am still using Google Tag Manager. That's my customer ID. And what's important here, the UA, so it stands for Universal Analytics, and it's telling me on what database the data will be recorded. And it's true. This is the tracking of this website. So that's my web marketing class, internal traffic excluded, meaning I have removed my own IP address. And I am just here looking at the tracking code, so as you can tell, there is a piece of code that has to be placed on the source code of your website. Although here, if I'm using Google Tag Manager, which is best practice, it will look a bit different. But just retain that a tracking code has to be placed in order to instruct your browser to keep track of what is happening on the site. And this is the idea of the database you are querying when you look at your statistics. So here, if I go again, say on the audience, that's the audience. So I can tell that you've been following along very well when I send you an email and so on. This is the number of people who connected to the site. And I am here just querying a database. So everything here that I am recording, so this, if you prefer, this is, they are all aggregated, processed, in order for me to get this user-friendly statistics. And you can do that with whatever website of your choice. Here, for example, it's on Renault, the French car maker company. And if I just type in collect here in the network section, I'm using Chrome, by the way. So if you want to do exactly what I'm doing, you can follow along with Chrome. Then you'll just have to go to the console, go on the network section, click collect, and see whether or not there are collection hits falling into Google Analytics database dedicated to Renault. And the number of this database is to be found here. The UA something, that's the identifier of a database for Google Analytics only. If you want to use other tools, other tracking tools, of course the database will be a bit different. Great. I also mentioned that the tracking tool is placing cookies on the cache memory of your device to record users and some of their navigation details. Then let's have a look at, say, the cookies that are placed on, why not, Europcar, which is a car rental company. And this time I'm going to open the console but not browse the network section. Instead, I'm going to look at the application one and see what types of cookies are being placed. Okay, so there I go. I just right-click, select Inspect, go on Application, Cookies. I select here Europcar.com and I can see all cookies that are being placed by Europcar on the cache memory of my device. These are all the cookies. So here, for example, Criteo is one of the key advertising companies that are mentioned in lesson 1. Bear in mind that each tracking tool uses its own cookies, and this below is the example of some Google Analytics 1. So I'm going to use Google Analytics because, it's a free tool, which is very handy for us for our lesson, and it's widely used across websites. So if you for your homework, if you have to choose a website and see whether or not it's tracked with Google Analytics, for example, there are chances that you find easily one. All right, then cookies, one or two things to retain. So there are tons of cookies, but for site-centric tools, we need at least 3. One. First, the user cookie, who stores the user ID. And this is thanks to that cookie that you are able to tell the number of users on your website. The session cookie determines when a session or a visit starts, and this is essential to know the number of visits or sessions that were performed during a certain period of time. And then a source cookie that would indicate where the user is coming from. All right, just to conclude on the different types of cookies, of course, there are cookies provided by your site-centric tools, but you can, if you want, create as many cookies as you want, provided you comply with legal requirements to store information on your users, like their preferred language and so on, in order to offer them a better experience. Important thing, cookies have a lifetime duration, so they are activated when they are placed by the code and they expire after a certain time of idleness. So it means if no interaction has been detected or no hits have been sent to the site-centric tool, and now you know what a hit is. It's like we saw earlier, the collection hit. This can lead to potential over or underestimation of the number of sessions, and we'll see that later in this class. Also, cookies are placed in the cache memory of a device, so as a consequence, this could impact the number of users that is provided by the site-centric tool, and we'll see that again later on. As you know, there are the RGPD or GDPR just force advertisers to ask one's permission to place cookies on a device before tracking anything, basically. So, as always, each company's legal department has its own interpretation of the law. Regarding the French law, it's even more restrictive because not only does it force the advertiser to ask the user permission, but it also limits the duration of a user cookie, and it should not exceed 13 months. And this is different from the by default user cookie length of Google Analytics, that is 2 years. So that's an example of what you have to do if you want to track properly, and of course in full compliance with the legal requirement. You just have to proceed to sets up of many kinds. So we're going to see how is that possible to make sure that only when one gives its consent, the tracking is being made. So let's see with a concrete example how it works. All right, so I go on a Sandbox website of mine, and it's dibendemoformation.com if you want to follow along. And I'm inspecting, so I right click, and what I'm going to do here is empty my cookies. So I go in the application, the name of the website, and I'm deleting this cookie. So you can retrieve here the Google Analytics cookie. I'm deleting this cookie. Well, I've deleted them all. No worries. It works the same. So I refresh my page, and there I go. I've got this request for consent. This is my console, so this is where I can see in a friendly way, thanks to this extension, how what hits are being sent to the database. In other words, if there are any tracking going on. Nothing is going on here, and if I click on OK, only then will I be able to see that there are Google Analytics page view tags, so telling me that there is a page that is being viewed, and this is it. Nothing happens before I gave my consent. So that's just to illustrate the fact that you should not track a site unless someone, the user, gave its consent, and that's usually collected by a click on a banner. And then last thing about cookies, I mentioned that they are used to store things about the user navigation, but because the advertiser or site owner are always more and more demanding regarding the quantity of information that they need to adapt their content, there is something that is really frequently used on top of cookies, and this is local storage. That it has to be found under the application menu as well. And instead of browsing cookies, you can just browse local storage. And the site that I found that is using this a lot is ASOS. That's really, really impressive, everything that they track about you. Here, that's a concrete example. I'm just browsing a page about a certain kind of dress, and it's recording the exact kind of dress and quite a lot of things. So they are really very accurate in what they are recording, and we'll see later on with the data layer that it's pretty impressive.